English 101, Week 6, Part 3. All right, so I'm going to kind of zip through the bottom of page 11 because it's very astrology shit. I don't really want to get into astrology. Okay, focus. My camera's not doing it. There we go. Everyone chooses his love from the ranks of beauty according to his worship. The followers of Zeus desire that their beloved should have a soul like him, and therefore they seek out one of a philosophical and imperial nature. So it's an astrology idea, sort of if you're born under the sign of Zeus, then you want to fall in love with someone who's either a philosopher or a king. And when they have found him and loved him, they do all they can to confirm such a nature in him. And if they have no experience of such disposition hitherto, meaning before now, they learn of anyone who can teach them and themselves follow that same way, and they have the less difficulty in finding the nature of their own God in themselves because they have been compelled to gaze intensely on him. Their recollection clings to him and they become possessed of him and receive him from their character and disposition, so far as man can participate in God. All right, so anyway, it's just astrology. His point is that some people are born into these sort of different groups and they want people like that. It's essentially like some people in love sometimes have a type. I'm sure you've heard this before, right? That some people, I'm sure you know people who fall in love and they seem to fall in love with the same type of person over and over and over again. That's one of those things that Socrates is trying to explain. In his mythological system, the way they're explaining it is that the souls are connected to gods before they're born into people. And so depending on the god your soul was connected to, that's your personality, and it's also who you fall in love with. We use these, and honestly, I don't want to make fun of astrology because, I understand it. The world is complicated, and in order to live in the world, you want to make sense of it. And one of the ways we make sense of things is by dividing things up into categories. This kind of person, that kind of person, this kind of person, that kind of person. I get it. Astrology, I think, puts a lot of emphasis on if you're born in this month, then you're like that. And I just think that's not the best way to explain why people are the way they are. Their birth month magically makes them a certain way. That doesn't sound right to me. But I get it. I get the impulse. Socrates is doing the same thing here. He's trying to organize the world by saying some people are like this and other people are like that. We still do that all the time. I mean, we have, in today's world, we have categories of race. But again, you can see how ugly that becomes very quickly because you don't want to get into a black people are like this, but Asian people, on the other hand, are like that. See how you're getting into like racism areas? But that's one of the places racism comes from, is a desire to categorize the world into groups and be like, that group over there is like this group. I'm in this group, but I'm not in this group. But we also have, there's categories of sexuality categories, and we go, these people are gay, and these people are straight, and these people are bisexuals, and these people are asexuals, and these people are, so there's all these groups, and I understand where it comes from. And there's psychological stuff, right? There's diagnostic psychological kinds of things where you go, this kind of person is suffering from this disorder, and this kind of person is this person's has personality disorder. This person has bipolar disorder. This person has ADHD. This person has whatever it is. And those are more scientific, but they come with problems. We also have basic categories like gender, right? Like this person is male, this person is female, this person is trans, right? So these little categories. We use categories to navigate the world we live in, but I'm sure you guys have noticed those categories often cause trouble because it's how people get to stereotypes. And they start going, because you're a woman, then you must be a nurturing, caring, kind person. And because you're a boy, boys like violence. And, that's not always true. And then you end up in, so sometimes it's exhausting for people to try to understand all the individuals in the world, and so they come up with categories. The categories are sometimes sort of helpful, but very quickly lead to stereotypes and racism. But see, that's something you can write a paper on. That's an interesting subject. If you wanted to grab a Plato quote from this area and write about why people do that, but that's very different. You can write an essay about that. What you cannot do is write an essay where you're like, Libras are like this, but Pisces, on the other hand, are like that. Because there's no data, because it's just kind of something people make up, and it's hard to talk about in an academic paper, which needs data and verifiable stuff in it. Okay, but if you want to talk about why people care about mythology or about astrology, that's different. Yeah, okay. If you write about astrology like it's true, you can't do that. But if you write about why human beings care about astrology, now you're writing a paper about psychology. It's what's going on. Why do people want astrology? What's it for? Now you can do a paper on that. So that's how you do these things. It's the same thing for religious stuff also. You don't want to write a paper where you talk about Jesus being correct. well, actually, that's a bad way to say it. You don't want to write a paper where you talk about Jesus being the Son of God. But you can write a paper about like why Christianity is important for people, like what psychological use does it have, or sociological, or group. So there's ways to do it, but you have to write about it for an audience of everybody instead of writing about the truth of it for an audience of religious believers. About so you know what I mean? Because your paper isn't going to only be read by people who believe in astrology or only be read by Christians. You see the way I'm doing it with this. Notice that I'm not telling you Socrates is correct. I'm not saying that. He's just using metaphors, and it's an interesting thing to talk about, but I'm not asking you to believe in it. Because it would be crazy if I said the only people who can pass this class are people who believe Socrates is telling the truth. That would be nuts. In the same way, you don't want to write a paper about astrology or Jesus where the reader has to believe in the mythology in order to read the paper or to make sense of it. So that because that in academics, that's not how we do. Okay, all right, this is going pretty good. I'm doing fine. We're all going to get through this. Okay, let's take a look at what else is going on here. Okay, the qualities they attribute to their god. All right, but those who are the followers of Hera, this should be Hera. This is Zeus's wife. She's a goddess. Seek a royal love, and when they have found him, they do just the same with him. And in like manner, the followers of Apollo, that's the god of medicine and music and the sun, of every other god walking the ways of their god, seek a love who is to be made like him who they serve. And whatever. The point is that different people like different souls are attracted to different people. And Socrates says it's because of the gods they follow. And whatever. I don't care about that. Let's go on to something else. So I'm turning the page here, and you're just gonna wait. Just wait. Just sit there and wait while I turn the page. Also, guys, we only have a page and a half more in Unit 2, so we're doing really good. I'm very happy with this. Okay. But Socrates, the point is that there's, and this is going to come up later, so it is important. This is going to come up later, so it's actually important to slow down here. Socrates' point is that in Socrates' mythology, and again, remember, I don't think Socrates actually believes this. It's just metaphors to help you think about it. He doesn't believe it. Like it's not like literally true, but it's like a useful metaphor or a way of thinking about things that's helpful temporarily. Like scaffolding helps you put up a building, but then you take the scaffolding down. You don't need it anymore. So Socrates is talking about different kinds of souls, right? That before they were born, some souls followed this god, and some souls followed that god, and some souls followed this other god. It's going to become important later. Because all this talk about souls, actually, it connects to exactly what I was saying. I'm really pleased this came up. All this talk about souls, and Socrates will say this in Unit 3. It'll become really important in Unit 3. It's just there's different kinds of people in the world. There's people in the world and they think differently. They have all kinds of different beliefs. There's different types of people. Now, Socrates will say they have different kinds of souls that follow different kinds of gods. You don't need to get into that. And just remember that the ancient Greek word for soul is psyche, which is related to psychology, so that psyche is our English word just for mind. There's different kinds of minds. There's different kinds of brains out there. There's different kinds of people think differently. It becomes important in the next part when we get to Unit 3. Because Socrates' points about how these different kinds of souls that follow different kinds of gods, it's really about how there's all different kinds of people you might talk to. And when you talk to them, because Socrates is real interested in discussion, but when you're talking to them, you have to choose the words that will connect to the minds that you're talking to. There's no magic formula. There is no one way to talk that all different minds, psyche, soul, there's no way to talk where all the different minds will understand what you're saying. You have to choose words and choose ways of speaking that are different because there's different people. And so this is not really about souls and mythology and the gods and astrology and all this stuff. It's really about audience, that there are audiences in the world. When you give a speech, or you write a paper, there's an audience of people who are going to hear your speech or read your paper, and they're different. And you have to think about who is in that audience before you open your mouth. That is what you're doing in this class, is you are learning to write papers for a college audience. One of the reasons that it's difficult is because you're not used to the audience yet. And so you'll write something in a paper and I'll have to say, I'm sorry, this isn't really what we do in college. You can't say that astrology is true or write a paper about how Jesus is the Son of God in college because the audience, their minds, their souls are all different. And you have to think about ways to appeal to different audiences in your writing. We'll get to that in the next thing. I'm really pleased with this. It's going good.